Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be going through the top 20 coin errors and varieties of 2023, and so we're going to be discussing all coins that sold in the year. There's some incredible over $1 million coins. We're also going to be discussing a bunch of ones that are hundreds of thousands or a few $1,000s, and the good news is all of them were found by collectors or dealers, so it's really exciting stuff, and I'm pumped to walk it through with you, starting with this 2018p Roosevelt dime. Low grade, it was struck on a foreign planchet, and that's really rare for any of these coins after like 2002, so this was a very uncommon error, sold for $3,360. I think 3 or 4 of them were discovered. They're pretty ugly. The metal that was struck is just like not particularly attractive, and so they're all low mint state grades, but it was not a dime, and the planchet that would have been fed and then struck just somehow came from a batch that we were striking for other countries. Number 19, this sold for over $4,000. It's a pretty subtle error, but you can probably tell if you have a coin eye and figure out that there's something going wrong here. It's a Sacagawea dollar in really nice condition that was struck on a quarter planchet. And so it actually seems to have toned or looks like a Sacagawea dollar. It's not like just, the regular Cupro nickel, which that's what I don't really get here because I think it actually is. But maybe there was some residual sort of metal from the other planchets that were being struck that are like the gold but not actually gold dollars. You can tell that it's a little bit off center, but the dollar and the quarter planchets aren't so wild, so there's actually nothing really off center in terms of any of the devices getting cut off, but you can just tell that like it is not a properly struck coin if you saw it. This 1972 Eisenhower is super cool. I think you could see this. The thing to note, though, is that you can find these types of items in much worse condition that are going to be less valuable. $4,500. This is a flip over double struck in collar. So collars hold the coins in as they're receiving their strike. What happened is this coin was struck once. Then it flipped over, and you can see the undertype is Eisenhower's head on this side, and the words like the reverse design and eagle on this side. It then, instead of getting ejected from the collar, it remained in it, flipped over as the dies, went back up before they struck another one, and struck it again. And so you can see the undertype. It's a large planchet coin, really, really cool coin, but it did circulate a little bit before somebody pulled it out. AU58. This 1973 is also relatively, it's similar, but here the retaining collars didn't do their job, and so it was struck off-center on the second time, but it had already been fully struck. So first, you have the regular strike back here, then it moves, and it was probably struck like there or so. You can see kind of where it cuts off. In God We Trust, 1973, same thing, multiple half dollars. This one's pretty visible, $4,800, really neat coin. Number 16, sort of a wild, we talked about a foreign planchet. In this case, in 1968, we were striking for Costa Rica, but there was a fully struck 1967 coin that was actually struck into this 1968S cent. The San Francisco Mint had a bunch of weird things, crazy errors that were almost certainly man-made going on at that time. I think this falls under that category. But the other side is totally, we don't see anything. I would assume this is kind of some aluminum. I should have looked into it, which would be a very light metal, easy to strike in. This 1965 dime is what's known as a transitional error or variety, so there's a lot of applications you can look for these, but 1964 we're striking in silver, 1965 we're striking in clad, so 90% goes into copper nickel in 1965 for the quarter, dime, and half dollar. The interesting thing is 1965 and 6 were backdating coins in silver that were striking, so it's more likely that something like this would have happened, where there's 1965 dies, they're only supposed to strike the regular copper nickel planchets, but some of the silver ones fall in the bin of planchets that's being fed. This one sold for over $14,000. So really good, if you have a 1965 silver dime, either somebody's and you can tell by the silver edge, you can weigh it. There's a lot of different ways to tell, but you should be excited. 2002p, I mentioned that they really cracked down on some of the issues around 2002, so this is very uncommon that this would happen, especially in 2002, but from Indiana, it was struck on a dime planchet, So this one sold for $17,000, really high number, but there's just very few state quarter errors. So if you're an Indiana collector and you want, there could easily be just 2 collectors who need this for their collection. They're willing to bid it up. It's a very rare item, and it was struck on a dime, which is a bigger difference from like the Sacagawea we saw earlier. Number 13, aluminum. So this is what could be like a holy grail coin. 1974, there were some aluminum test pennies struck. We decided not to do it. There's like one that was graded by PCGS, and there's like a legal battle around it. But in this case, we were also striking coins for the Philippines, and they had some aluminum planchets for their low dollar coins. So somehow we had a one side strike. That means uniface. So probably on the other side, it was like on top of another penny or something, and didn't receive a strike. This one was struck. Not in the best shape for being a mint state coin, $19,200. There's a lot of weakness in the design and hits, but not in a circulated way. Here we have a transitional. I mentioned that dime. Well, the same thing obviously happened on pennies, which were made out of zinc-coated steel in 1943 to conserve for the war effort. It was a one-year type. There were reasons we undid it and went back to a sort of bronze or copper-nickel planchet in the following years. But of course, some of the zinc-coated steel stuck around and made their way into the dies. 1944D, I think, is a less common type. This one's AU details. It was cleaned. It still fetched over $20,000, so it's certainly something. And collectors actually do find these. They're one of the more known, so a lot of people look for them, but they do come up from time to time. This 1944 was also well circulated. Often it took a while before somebody realized what they had. This one's not cleaned though, and 44 is more common than the 44D, but that cleaning really matters. In this case, again, sells for around $24,000. And then here's another interesting modern variety that you can look for, the No S 1968 Roosevelt dime. So there should be a S mint mark right here. This is a proof die, so there are, I actually think it might only be 1968D and no regular 1968 coins, but we only did like one mint mark because we were worried about people hoarding the new clad coins. So like 1965, 66, 67, it's all from, there's no mint mark on any of them, but these are supposed to be proof coins, and we brought back the proof design in 68 after making special mint set coins, and we forgot to put, they would make all the dies in Philadelphia or centrally, send them out. Philadelphia wouldn't put a mint mark, but Denver, San Francisco, today West Point are going to. But for these specially proof dies, wouldn't put an S. This one's one of the rarer ones. There's a few more common types, and this sold for $25,000. It also has a nice ultra cameo, so there's a lot of design. There's like a lot of frost. It was early in the die, because dies wear down, they lose their frostiness, and that's what creates the cameo effect. Here's one of the classic varieties, sold for over $25,000, and there's been stories of kids finding these in their parents' pocket change. It's a very clearly doubled, and you're seeing double, 1969 San Francisco regular business strike coin. Probably got released into circulation, but didn't actually circulate because it's technically an Unk coin. But it's like a seeing double. When the dies are produced, they're struck by a master die, and in this case, it was, sometimes you need multiple impressions. These were fairly off, and these were really, really off as opposed to a little bit off, which is normally what creates doubling, and this very, very bizarre double die was created. 1937D, we also see, this is more, I think it's like a grease-filled die or just something got in the dies, is a pretty popular type, and it's unlikely to have these in such nice condition, very well struck up. 1937D, there's also, I think, a 3060, like 3.5, but this is really the three-legged one that people care about, where there's like an invisible front leg on the buffalo, which is on the reverse of the coin, and this sold for $27,600. So you just want to see, it has to be from the Denver Mint, but that three-legged buffalo, very, very popular coin. Right here, also very interesting. This is a wheat penny. This is the well-known wheat penny. There's a fair amount of wheat penny double dies. I need to update like my top 15 wheat pennies video or something like that, but super clear spread. This one's almost more dramatic than the 1969. You can find more of these that are well circulated. People didn't really care that much about double die coins. Apparently there were a lot of these in like cigarette packs or something like that, but you can super clearly see how it's doubled all through the lettering. The back is untouched, but this one sold for $28,800 in a nice mint state 64 red PCGS grade. And then here we have the accented hair. This is more of a conditional variety. There's plenty of accented hair coins that are not even $100, but when Kennedy died, 1964, they switched the Franklin $50 design to Kennedy to commemorate him. He's assassinated, and in early proof trials, I think people gave feedback that they actually didn't really like how much his hair was accented, and so they removed that, like not as much detail in the hair here. The way to tell, you can look for the hair, but it's a little bit misleading. You want to look at the eye. If there's no serif on the left bottom part of that eye, that's where you can really tell. I found these, they're not like super uncommon, but this one also, again, it's deep cameo, so it's early when a new die is made and it strikes coins. The early ones are going to be super frosty, and on proofs, people collect that when there's a lot of contrast in the fields versus the frosty devices. So this one's deep cameo and in really nice condition. If it was like a proof 64 accented hair, I want to say that's like a $60 coin. I could be a little bit off on that number. Here we have higher condition. The only reason it sold for more, it's not as rare, but this is actually fun because I found one of these. This is a 1936 double die. I found it in a bank roll, and it was with some extra help from YouTube that was like, yes, you are looking at a double die, because I was like, ooh, is this or not? But here you can see very clearly how the date, there's clear splits. This is maybe more representative of what the average double die looks like. It's not so much seeing double as it is seeing double when you really zoom in. It's got a like a northeast southwest spread, so you can see two serifs shelving on the 9 and the 3, same thing in the 6, sold for $35,000. The one I found is like a $70 coin because it's circulated. Here we have a 1942/1. Hopefully this is informative just in terms of how I explain some of this stuff. An overdate coin. So I should have zoomed in a little bit more, but you can see there's like this underlying bar of a 4 and this underlying 1. The 2 is over the 1. And basically they had a 1941 die. They were striking coins with it, and then they're like, oops, it's 1942. So instead of throwing out the die, I mean, I guess it's expensive to produce, they just stamped, because at this point they might stamp individual numbers because they're stamping individual, I don't know if you've heard of a repunched mint mark, they're individual D mint mark. So they did the same thing with the dates and the numbers, and the number punch, you can see underneath the 41. So not the highest quality coin. This one is about a $40,000 coin in really nice shape. It's also the sort of thing that you can find from time to time in a coin shop or something like that, junk bin. Then we have something that's really rare but was found at a coin show. This interesting, like different looking prototype strike. This was like one of the very first Eisenhower dollars, and it's a specimen, so it was not something that I remember the full story of. This one sold for about $102,000. I think there was a different one discovered that was like $250,000, kind of that range. But it was the very first Eisenhower dollar, and it's significant because they hadn't struck coins like that in a really long time. It was the Morgan dollar, the peace dollar, then there were some 64 peace dollars that all got melted. But in this case, they actually were bringing back the large size dollar for the first time. It only ended up being like an 8-year type. And so these were the earliest. I think it's got like certainly really sharp rims, some milky and different surfaces. I want to say there's even a little bit of diagnostics in the eagle, but that's something definitely to look for. I think it's like the Lidstone prototype, 1971 Ike. Here we have one of those incredible, and I was talking about better condition coins. This is a copper 1943, which is just beautiful, beautiful look to it. I think they're often valued a little bit more than the 44 in steel. This was, the wrong, should have had the copper in 42 and 44, bronze in 42, 44. And so transitional planchet, really well struck, has very nice, like creamy brown surfaces, several $100,000 coin. Buy you a house with that. And then lastly, 1958 double die obverse mint state 65 red CAC, over $1 million, sold for $1,136,250 at Great Collections. And this actually is less than one of 5 or so known. I want to say it might even just be like 2 or 3 of these that are on the market. It's an incredible double die. It's really interesting. You don't see it in the date. It's very clear. I think there's certain types of doubling like have, it's like not centric, but like, centered around here, and then the shift is occurring above. Super strong doubling in Liberty, super strong doubling in the In God We Trust. But imagine if those 1955 or 1969 double dies were, 1 of 5. Well, this is what happens. High-end variety collectors, this is just like not something that's on the market, and people came to bat when it sold at great collections, again over $1 million. So maybe I can try to interview Ian Russell about some of those coins at some point. He's the owner and like head of Great Collections, the auction house. Would also be fun to talk with Greg or variety expert, or Dave or Steve or whoever at Heritage about some of these other fantastic heirs. But we'll see if that happens in the future. Look forward to seeing you on some of my future videos. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to head on over to treasuretown.com and sign up for our email list to stay up to date on everything that's happening, whether it's auction updates, exciting new inventory drops, coin collecting news, or general informational resources. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on another one.